Hi theory students. Today we're going to be talking about tonicizing scale degrees other than 5, the dominant. In the last chapter we talked about a 5 of 5 or a 5/7 of 5, and we also talked about a 7/7 of 5 or a 7/6 of 5. And now we're going to apply that principle to other scale degrees besides 5. Just as 5 can have its own dominant or leading tone chord, borrowed from the key of 5, any major or minor triad can have its own dominant or leading tone chord. They're constructed the same way, but with a different goal or target in mind. In particular, a 5 of x, whatever scale degree x is, will be a major chord in a descending fifth progression to x, our target. So a 5 of 2 will be a major chord in a descending fifth progression to 2. A 5/7 of x, or wherever the target is, will be a major triad with a minor seventh, because that's how dominant sevenths are constructed, of course. Likewise, a 7/7 of the target will be a diminished seventh chord, diminished triad, diminished seventh, with the root a half step below our target. This is very important to remember because the half step forms a leading tone. The whole step does not form a leading tone. Let's see how this works. If we're in the key of D, of course, if we had an A major chord, we all know that as a 5 chord. And if I wanted a 5 of 5, I would find the chord in a descending fifth progression to 5, and I would make this a major chord. So then here's the alteration. I need to make a G sharp there in order to make this over here a major chord. Now, let's pick another scale degree in the key of D. So let's pick scale degree 2. That's a 2 chord. If I wanted to make a 5 of 2, I would try to find what would be a 5 chord in the key of E minor, or I could say what is the chord in a descending fifth relation to 2, and it has B as a root, and now I want to construct a major chord on B. So now I'm going to have B, D sharp, and F sharp. The F sharp's already in the key signature, and it works that way. Let me change this a little bit, and by the way, it may help if you're keeping track of this. To actually write the notes in there just as we did with the 5 of 5. So now if I want a 5/7 of 5, I'll have to decide which one of these two will be incomplete, of course. And if I want a complete 5/7 of 2, the seventh of the 5/7 goes down, our temporary leading tone goes up, and now I can take that F sharp down as well. And that's how that works. Let me construct a 7/7 of 2 going to 2. Diminished chord, F sharp, D sharp, F sharp, A. The The 7th of the chord is C natural. Both that one and that one are alterations from a D major key. We use C sharp because we want a diminished 7th, not C natural because we want a diminished 7th, not C sharp, the minor 7th above D sharp. This is why it's crucial that you get the root correct and that the root be a half step away from the target if it's going to be a 7/7 of something. So here's the D sharp. I can put an A there. I can put an F sharp here. I could put a C natural there, and the D sharp and C natural, the accidentals need to be written in. We remember our resolutions, and in this particular case, the 7th of the chord goes down. Our temporary leading tone goes up, and we can have 2/3 here because I want to avoid diminished 5th here to perfect 5th if I can. Sometimes composers will flip these intervals so that they can get a complete root doubling 2 chord. Do they ever use half diminished 7th chords? Sometimes, but they're less common. What about a triad 7, like a 7/6? Again, they're possible, but a little bit less common. So the 7/7 will be the typical one. In a major key, what are the minor and major triads in the key besides the tonic? 2, 3, 4, 5, which we've already covered, and 6. And those are the ones that can be tonicized, or in other words, get their own 5 of, 5/7 of, or 7/7 of those chords. In a minor key, remember that 2 is normally diminished, so that's not an acceptable target. 3 is major, 4 is minor. 5, if it's the dominant chord, will be major, or in some cases, if it's unaltered, it'll be minor. You see a little bit of both. 6 is major, and 7, not the leading tone, which is diminished, but the subtonic, which is a major chord. Those can all be tonicized. There are a few little odds and ends. If we're talking about a 5 of 4 in major, that's really just a 1 chord. So we don't call a 1 chord a 5 of 4. On the other hand, we can write a 5/7 of 4, and it will require an alteration, and that's a real secondary chord. Let me show you what I mean by that. So let's look at this in the key of F major. And here's a 4 chord. Of course, if I write things like this, I'm not going to call this a 5 of 4. That's just an F major chord in the key of F. That's a 1 chord, of course. However, if I want a 5/7 of 4, think of major chord, F, A, C, and now a minor 7th above F is not E, but E flat. Ah, okay. That changes things. So now I've got a 5/7 of 4, and that's a legitimate secondary chord. 7th of the chord goes down, and I'll get a 4 chord with the root being tripled, since the 5/7 of 4 is a complete chord. One of the other oddities is that in a minor key, the 5 or 5/7 of 3 is really just a 7 chord or a 7/7 chord and requires no alterations. So one way to think about this, think about in the key of A minor, where 3 is a C major chord. A 7 chord, a subtonic, is G, B, and D, or a 7/7, G, B, D, and F. You can take your choice whether to call this a 7 chord or a 7/7 chord, or if it resolves to the C major chord, you might want to call this a 5 or 5/7 of 3. But note that all of these notes are naturally occurring notes in A minor and don't require alterations. In the next video cast, I'll show you a little more about the function of these chords, but that's all for now.